In the outer spiral of the Relian arm, far from the bright, crowded cores where empires liked to pretend they were eternal, there was a trade station called Virex 9. It was old. It was patched together from the bones of forgotten wars, and it smelled faintly of ion coolant, fermented algae, and desperation. No one came to Virex 9 unless they had to. The station hung like a rusted halo around a dim red dwarf, its docking spines crooked and asymmetrical, added over centuries by species who had never agreed on standard measurements. Gravity fluctuated by corridor. Lights flickered in hues that made some eyes ache and others go blind. Every sound echoed twice, once through air and once through the station's tired metal frame. It was neutral territory, which meant it was dangerous for everyone. That was where I first saw the human. He did not look impressive. This is important. He was shorter than most of the galactic species that passed through Virex 9, narrow-shouldered, no visible armor, no ceremonial markings, no guards, drones, or escort beasts trailing behind him the way important beings usually traveled. Just a single biped wrapped in a worn environmental jacket, boots scuffed by honest use, carrying a crate that was clearly heavier than it looked. If I had to name the emotion he inspired at first glance, it would be dismissal. And I was not alone. The Cathari, who ruled 3 nearby systems, barely glanced at him. The Olran syndicate brokers ignored him outright. Even the station's scavenger servitors, machines old enough to have personalities, did not bother adjusting their paths to avoid him. A nobody, a soft creature from a soft world, a human. We knew of humans, of course, everyone did by then. They were new to interstellar politics, loud in their media, strangely obsessed with storytelling, and, according to most strategic briefings, harmless unless provoked. They had no empire, no ancient bloodlines, no warrior castes bred over millennia. They were tolerated, sometimes pitied, occasionally exploited. And on Virex 9, exploitation was an art form. The elder woman was crouched near Docking Ring C when the incident occurred. She was Taleth of the Sharavil, a species whose lifespan stretched long, but whose bodies grew fragile with age. Her carapace, once a smooth, pearlescent blue, had dulled and cracked, etched with time and hardship. One of her lower limbs was twisted improperly, the result of an old injury that had never been treated. Her crate had split open. Nutrient orbs, her entire trading stock, rolled across the uneven deck plating, glowing softly as they scattered toward drains and shadowed corners. No one stopped. Why would they? Taleth was old, slow, and Sharavil traders were no longer protected under any major commercial charter. To most beings on Virex 9, she was already invisible. I watched from the upper concourse, my sensory fronds folded tight against my head. I remember feeling uncomfortable, not enough to intervene, just enough to notice. The Cathari guard stepped over her orbs without breaking stride. A pair of Olran laughed, clicking their mandibles as one deliberately nudged an orb into a maintenance shaft. Taleth made a small sound, a sound of restrained grief. Sharavil elders did not beg. They endured. Then the human stopped. He had been walking past her, eyes forward, posture weary, mind clearly elsewhere. Something made him pause. Perhaps the sound, perhaps instinct, perhaps something else humans carried that our analysts had never quite quantified. He looked down, and then he sighed. Not in annoyance, not in disgust. It was the sound of someone accepting a delay. The human set his crate down carefully, as if it mattered where it rested, and crouched beside the elder woman. "Hey," he said, softly. The universal translator rendered it into Sharaviel tonal clicks with a slight delay. The word was meaningless on its own, but the tone was not. Concern. Taleth startled. Her sensory fans flared in surprise. I do not have credits to spare, nor protection contracts. I'm not selling anything. Looks like you could use a hand. He began gathering the scattered nutrient orbs. Just doing it. No announcement, no demand for compensation, no expectation of gratitude. I felt a ripple of quiet confusion move through those who noticed. Acts of aid were rarely free on Virex 9. There was always a ledger, spoken or unspoken. Taleth hesitated. Then slowly she joined him, her damaged limb dragging slightly as she reached. Your species, she said carefully, is not known for station charity. The human gave a small, crooked smile. Yeah, he said, we're not known for a lot of things we still do anyway. He stacked the orbs back into the crate with surprising care, adjusting the padding so they wouldn't roll again. When one flickered weakly, its energy field destabilizing, he paused. That one's damaged, he observed. Taleth's fans drooped. Then it is lost. I cannot afford a replacement. The human reached into his jacket. I tensed. Weapons were common on Virex 9. Instead, he pulled out a compact field stabilizer, civilian grade, scratched, probably second-hand. I can tune it, he said. Won't be perfect, but it'll hold long enough for a sale. He did not wait for permission. As he worked, I noticed something else, something subtle. The nearby predators, both organic and corporate, were watching him now. Not because he was dangerous, but because he was strange. Why help an elder alien with no leverage? Why waste time? Why expose oneself? The human finished adjusting the stabilizer and returned it to his pocket. There, he said, should buy you a few days. Taleth stared at the crate, then at him. You ask nothing in return? She asked. He shrugged. Nah, just pay it forward, I guess. She tilted her head. To whom? The human stood, lifting his own crate with a quiet grunt. To someone who needs it. That's usually how it works. And with that, he nodded once, respectfully, and walked away. No flourish, no pause to be thanked. Just gone, swallowed by the crowd. Taleth watched him disappear, her sensory fans trembling. I remember thinking that would be the end of it. A small kindness, unremarkable in the grand accounting of the galaxy. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. Because Taleth of the Sharaviel did not forget, and neither did the others who witnessed it, those of us who would later stand in silence, watching humans do things we had thought impossible, and realizing that we had misunderstood them from the very beginning.
Virex 9 had a way of remembering things. Not officially, of course. There were no logs for small kindnesses, no incident reports filed for moments of decency. But stations like that, old ones, wounded ones, developed memories the way living creatures did, in patterns, in rumors, in the way glances lingered just a fraction longer than before. By the next rotation, word had spread, not loudly, not in celebration, but in the quiet, disbelieving tone reserved for things that didn't quite fit the model. A human helped a Sharaviel elder for free. The phrase passed from mandible to vocal sac, from data slate to private channel, always followed by a pause, always with the same unspoken question. Why? Taleth returned to docking ring C the following cycle, her crate reinforced with scavenged plating, the nutrient orbs glowing more steadily now. She arranged them carefully, her movements precise despite the pain she did not acknowledge. Trade was slow. Sharaviel nutrient orbs were nutritious, long-lasting, and culturally versatile, but they were not fashionable. They did not grant status or prestige, and Taleth herself carried no guild insignia, no powerful sponsorship. Still, a few buyers came, a pair of Rim colony traders, a station cook with limited credits, Even one Cathari junior officer who glanced around before making his purchase as if ashamed to be seen engaging with someone so low on the social ladder. Taleth accepted each transaction with dignity, and she watched. She watched the crowds. She watched the guards. She watched for the human. He did not return that day, nor the next. Taleth told herself she felt nothing about that. Humans were transient by nature, she reasoned, short-lived, restless. They passed through places like Virex 9 the way comets pass through systems, bright for a moment, then gone. Still, when the third cycle passed without him, she felt something uncomfortably close to disappointment. It was on the fourth cycle that the galaxy reminded her why kindness was considered a liability. The Olrin Syndicate had decided her stall occupied a profitable location. They did not approach directly. Olrin never did. Instead, a pair of their contracted enforcers, tall, chitinous beings with reinforced forelimbs, positioned themselves just close enough to cast a shadow over Taleth's goods, not touching, not blocking, simply present. Buyers slowed, then stopped. Taleth's fans trembled, but she did not move. Sharaviel elders had survived extinction events. Intimidation was not new. One enforcer clicked his mandibles. "Your trade permit is outdated." "It is valid under station law," Taleth replied calmly. The enforcer leaned closer. "Station law is flexible." The second enforcer tapped one nutrient orb with a claw, just hard enough to make it flicker. "Occasions happen," he added. Taleth felt the familiar cold settle in her core. She had no credits for protection, no family near enough to matter, and the station authorities were selective in their enforcement. This was how it ended then, not with violence, not dramatically, just pressure, quiet, relentless. She was gathering her courage to speak when a voice cut through the tension. "Hey." The word again, simple, soft, human. I saw him before Taleth did. Same jacket, same scuffed boots, same crate, lighter this time, slung over one shoulder. He stopped a few steps away, gaze flicking from the enforcers to Taleth, then back. "Problem?" he asked. The Olrin enforcers turned slowly. They did not laugh, they did not threaten, they assessed. A single human, no visible weapons, no backup. One of them angled his head. "This is not your concern, soft skin." The human nodded. "Yeah, that tracks." He set his crate down, carefully, and something in that motion, unhurried, deliberate, made my fronds tighten. "Station law says she's allowed to trade here. You want the spot, go through the proper channels." The enforcer's mandibles flared. "We are the proper channels." The human's expression didn't change, but his posture did. Not aggressive, grounded. "Then file the claim. Until then, back off." Silence followed. Around them, traffic slowed. Beings pretended not to watch, which was the surest sign that they were. The Olrin enforcers exchanged a brief subvocal signal. Then one laughed, a harsh clicking sound. "You humans, always so eager to involve yourselves. You do not understand how things work out here." "Probably not, but I understand this." He reached into his jacket. Several beings flinched. What emerged was not a weapon, it was a data slate. He activated it with a thumb and held it up. "Station registry, Docking Ring C, subsection 12. Recorded commercial claim, Sharaviel independent trader Taleth, valid, filed 3 cycles ago." The Olrin enforcer stared. "How?" "Public records," the human said. "Took me 10 minutes." The second enforcer growled. "You think information protects you?" "No," the human said honestly. "I think witnesses do." He gestured subtly to the small crowd that had gathered. "And I think you don't want station arbitration poking around your operations over one old traitor." The Olrin hesitated. That hesitation was everything. After a long moment, the enforcer clicked his mandibles sharply. "This is not over," he said to Taleth. Then to the human, "You will regret this." The human shrugged. "Wouldn't be the first time." The enforcers withdrew. The crowd dispersed. interest fading now that violence had been denied. Taleth stared up at the human, her fans fully extended. "You returned," she said softly. He glanced at her crate. "Told you I'd pay it forward. Guess today it looped back." She studied him for a long moment. "Why?" she asked again. "You gain nothing." The human considered that. "I gain a station where bullies don't get everything they want. Seems like a decent return." He picked up his crate, then paused. "My name's Elias," he added, "in case, names matter." Taleth inclined her head deeply. "I am Taleth of the Sharavil, and you have done more than you know, Elias." He smiled a little awkwardly. "That's what everyone says right before I find out I messed something up." He left again, but this time the station remembered, because the Olrin Syndicate did not forget slights, and humans, especially lone, unimportant ones, were not supposed to challenge them, not without consequences.
Retaliation, when it came, was quiet. That was the first sign that something was wrong. The Olrin Syndicate did not strike in public. They did not make a scene. Violence drew attention, and attention invited audits, inquiries, and the kind of scrutiny that even criminal conglomerates preferred to avoid. Instead, they squeezed. Elias noticed it before Taleth did. His next shipment, medical field kits bound for an outer colony, was delayed, no reason given. His docking access was rerouted twice, then flagged for routine inspection. A station servitor misplaced his cargo manifest, forcing him to resubmit documentation that had already been approved. In isolation, each inconvenience was trivial. Together, they formed a pattern. Humans were good at recognizing patterns born of hostility. It was one of the reasons they survived on a planet that tried, constantly, to kill them. Elias sat in his rented compartment, bare walls, single gravity couch, the hum of aging systems vibrating through the floor, and exhaled slowly. "All right," he muttered, "so that's how you want to play it." He could leave. That was the sensible option. Virek's mind was not his home. He had contracts elsewhere, worlds that paid better, stations that didn't smell like old oil and broken promises. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Taleth's nutrient orbs scattered across the deck. He saw the way her fans had drooped when the Olrin enforcers loomed. He opened his eyes again. "No," he said quietly, "not like this." The next cycle, Elias didn't avoid Taleth's stall. He set up beside it. No signage, no flashy displays, just a human, a folding crate turned into a seat, and a small stack of compact med kits arranged neatly in front of him. Taleth watched in astonishment. "You will draw attention," she warned. "Already did. Might as well make it obvious." Attention came, not from buyers at first, but from predators. Olrin agents passed by, eyes glittering. Cathari guards paused longer than necessary. Station officials made notes they pretended were unrelated. Elias met their gazes calmly. And then something unexpected happened. A dock worker stopped. A scarred being with 4 arms and a limp, his species unimportant, his expression tired. "You're selling those?" he asked, nodding at the medkits. "Yeah, fair price." The dock worker hesitated. "They legit?" Elias slid one across. "Check the seal." The dock worker did. His shoulders sagged in relief. "I've been putting off treating an infection. Couldn't afford the syndicate rates." "Now you can," Elias said. The sale was small, but it was the first crack. Others followed. A freighter crew member, a station cleaner, a Cathari junior medic who didn't want to explain why he was buying off-ledger supplies. Taleth's stall saw renewed traffic as well. Buyers lingered, emboldened by Elias's presence. It was harder to intimidate someone when a human was calmly sipping a nutrient drink nearby, watching everything. The Olrin noticed. Of course they did. 3 cycles later, Elias's compartment was searched. He returned to find the door ajar, his belongings scattered with calculated messiness. Nothing stolen, nothing damaged. A message, then, not written, not recorded, just a single Olrin enforcer waiting in the corridor. "You are persistent,"
the Olrin said. I'm human, Elias replied. The station is not yours. Your interference is bad for business. Then adjust your business model, Elias replied. The Olrin's mandibles flared. You are alone. Elias met his gaze. So is she. Silence stretched between them. You think this ends well for you? The Olrin asked. Elias considered the question seriously. No, he said. I think it ends right. The enforcer stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and left. That night, Taleth came to Elias's compartment. Sharaville elders did not travel unescorted unless the matter was grave. You endanger yourself, she said gently. Yeah, Elias agreed. Kinda my thing. She hesitated, then spoke words that would echo far beyond Virex 9. Among my people, debts of honor are not repaid lightly. Elias smiled faintly. I'm not keeping a ledger. I am, she replied. She told him then of the Sharaville Compact, of family lines scattered but not broken, of daughters many generations removed from youth, yet still vibrant by their species standards, who served as diplomats, engineers, and traders across the spiral. You aided me when none would. You stood when retreat was wise. Such traits are valued. Elias blinked. I'm not sure where this is going. Taleth's fans fluttered, an expression of amusement. I heard you want a wife, she said. Elias choked on his drink. What? My daughters are ideal for you, Taleth continued calmly, if you survive what comes next. Elias stared at her, then laughed, a genuine, surprised sound. Let's maybe survive first, then we'll talk matchmaking. Taleth inclined her head. Agreed, because what was coming next would test more than Elias's resolve. It would test the galaxy's assumptions about what humans did when they were pushed too far. The Olrin Syndicate made a mistake. Not the obvious kind, not violence in a public concourse or the assassination of a protected traitor. They were too experienced for that. Their mistake was assuming that pressure applied to a human would produce isolation. It usually worked. Most species, when targeted by a syndicate with enough reach, withdrew. They cut losses. They left quietly. Survival through absence was a common galactic strategy. Humans did not think that way. They thought in networks. Elias sent 3 messages, not to authorities, not to guilds, not even to other traders on Virex 9. He sent them to other humans. A cargo pilot he'd once helped jury-rig a failing nav core. A medical volunteer stationed 2 jumps away who still owed him a favor. A data analyst who'd grown up with him on a dust-poor colony and trusted his instincts implicitly. The messages were short. Olrin pressure on Virex 9. Independent traders getting squeezed. Could use eyes, maybe hands. No dramatics. No call to arms. Just information. Humans understood what that meant. The first arrived 2 cycles later. A freighter, old but well-maintained, docking under a civilian charter. Its transponder read Hearthward Line, a minor human logistics cooperative known for fair rates and stubborn ethics. The captain was a woman named Rhea Calder. She stepped onto Virex 9 with the confidence of someone who'd navigated asteroid storms and corporate audits with equal success. She took in the station with a practiced eye, noting the guards, the syndicate markers, the subtle territorial claims. She found Elias by Taleth's stall. You always pick the messiest places, she said, grinning. Hey, nice to see you too. Rhea's gaze flicked to Taleth, then back to Elias. This the elder you mentioned? Taleth inclined her head. You are welcome, human. Rhea smiled warmly. Likewise. She didn't stay long, but Hearthward Line began offering discounted transport to independent traders on Virex 9. The Olrin noticed. Then came the medic, Dr. Sanja Iqbal, Human, licensed across 12 systems, wearing a coat patched with old mission insignia. She set up a temporary clinic near Docking Ring C, ostensibly to serve transient workers. Her rates were transparent, affordable. She treated Taleth's injured limb for free. "It'll never be perfect," Sanja said gently, "but it doesn't have to hurt this much." Taleth wept, quietly. Sharaviel tears crystallized as they fell. The Ulran noticed. Then came the data analyst. He never arrived in person. Instead, station arbitration systems began flagging Ulran operations for anomalies. Minor things, paperwork discrepancies, licensing overlaps, enough to slow them down. The Ulran noticed, and this time they reacted. An ultimatum was delivered to Elias. Leave Virex 9, cease interference, or consequences would escalate. Elias read the message, then forwarded it to everyone. Humans had a peculiar relationship with threats. They didn't always see them as deterrents. Sometimes they saw them as invitations. The next cycle, Virex 9's concourses were different. Human traders appeared in clusters, not aggressive, not uniformed, just present. They bought from independent stalls. They shared meals. They talked. Stories flowed, of worlds lost, of lines held, of things worth protecting, even when the math said otherwise. The station began to change, subtly at first. Predatory species hesitated, not because humans were stronger, but because there were many and they talked to one another. The Ulran tried to push back. They raised fees, delayed shipments, leaned harder. And then Taleth made her move. She invoked the Sharaviel Compact. It had been centuries since the compact had been activated. Many thought it ceremonial, obsolete. They were wrong. Sharaviel ships began arriving, not warships, diplomatic vessels, trade envoys, cultural attachés, family representatives. They came not in anger, but in solidarity. Taleth stood beside Elias as the first delegation disembarked, her posture straighter than it had been in decades. "You did not ask for this," she said. Elias watched the arrivals in awe. "I kinda just picked up some spilled groceries." Taleth's fans fluttered with amusement. "Small kindnesses," she said, "can echo loudly." The Ulran Syndicate found itself under scrutiny from multiple angles. Human logistics, human medical charters, Sharaviel diplomatic pressure, all legal, all transparent, all relentless. They could not strike without provoking a coalition they had not anticipated. They withdrew, quietly. Virex 9 breathed. For the first time in a long while, the station felt safer. Elias sat with Taleth near her stall, watching the flow of traffic. "I think I accidentally started something," he said. Taleth regarded him fondly. "You started nothing. You reminded others of what they already were." She paused. "My daughters will arrive soon," she added. Elias groaned softly. "I knew that was coming back." Taleth's fans shimmered in laughter. But across the galaxy, analysts were taking notes, because this wasn't how soft species behaved, and humans were no longer just present, they were connected.
Galactic attention is a slow thing. It does not arrive in fleets or fanfare. It arrives in reports, in quiet transmissions, in analysts leaning back in their chairs and rereading data they do not understand. At first, Virex 9 was just an anomaly, a minor trade station, low strategic value, no military significance. Yet syndicate influence had retreated. Independent trade had increased. Human logistics lines had expanded. Sharaviel diplomatic traffic had surged. It didn't make sense until someone connected the dots. It wasn't a takeover. It wasn't a conquest. It wasn't even a political maneuver. It was alignment. Dozens of unrelated actors, species, and networks behaving as if guided by a shared ethic rather than a shared authority. No central command, no single leader, no treaty, just response. The Galactic Observation Council, an ancient, slow-moving institution that only noticed things after they had already reshaped history, dispatched a cultural envoy team. Not investigators, observers. They arrived quietly, posing as neutral traders and scholars, and they watched. They watched Elias help unload a freighter without being asked. They watched Rhea Calder negotiate transport contracts that favored small traders over megacorps. They watched human medics treat non-humans without prejudice. They watched Taleth walk for the first time in decades. They recorded conversations, small ones, ordinary ones. "Why are you helping them?" one observer asked a human dock worker. The dock worker shrugged. "They're here, we're here. That's kind of enough." Another asked a human trader, "What do you gain from this network?" The trader frowned. "Stability, fewer bullies, better neighbors. Seems like a fair trade." None of the answers matched known galactic models. No hierarchy, no caste logic, no genetic imperative, just values. Meanwhile, the Ulran Syndicate was bleeding influence, not violently, quietly. Clients left, routes shifted, contracts dissolved, not because of fear, but because humans made better alternatives, safer, fairer, predictable. That was more dangerous to the Ulran than any war fleet. And then the Sharavil daughters arrived. They were extraordinary, not physically imposing, not militarized, but brilliant. One was a systems engineer who redesigned Virex 9's power grid for efficiency and redundancy. One was a diplomat who negotiated interspecies trade compacts in 3 languages simultaneously. One was a cultural liaison who built education networks for station-born children of mixed species. They did not dominate, they integrated. And they all sought Elias out, not as a ruler, not as a leader, as a man who had helped their mother when the galaxy would not. Taleth watched from her stall as Elias stood surrounded by beings from a dozen species, laughing awkwardly, embarrassed by the attention. "He does not understand," one observer said to a human dock worker. Taleth's fans fluttered with affection. That is his greatest strength. The Galactic Observation Council finalized its report. The summary line would later become famous. Humans do not expand through conquest, they expand through connection. They were not the strongest species, not the oldest, not the most advanced, not the most numerous, but they were something else. They were contagious. Not biologically, ideologically. Their behaviors propagated, empathy replicated, cooperation spread, networks formed, not because humans forced them, but because they made them work. Elias never knew about the report. He was too busy living, helping Taleth restructure her trade network, teaching station kids basic engineering skills, arguing with Rhea about freight optimization, drinking tea with Sharavil diplomats who spoke of history older than human civilization. One evening, he sat with Taleth on the station's observation deck. Stars burned silently beyond the viewport. "You changed my life," Taleth said softly. Elias shook his head. "No, you changed mine. I just picked something up." Taleth turned her gaze to the stars. "No," she said, "you chose." Silence fell between them. Peaceful. Earned. Because the galaxy had not been conquered, it had been taught. History rarely marks the moment it changes. There is no sound, no tremor through space-time, no announcement carried on stellar winds. Change happens while people are busy living. Years later, historians would argue about when the perception of humanity truly shifted. Some would point to treaties, others to trade networks, a few to carefully worded reports from the Galactic Observation Council. They would all be wrong. The moment the galaxy began to understand humanity happened on a forgotten trade station orbiting a dim red star when a tired human bent down and picked up what someone else had dropped. Virex 9 did not become famous. It did not turn into a capital world or a shining beacon of interstellar unity. It remained what it had always been, patched, imperfect, stubbornly alive. But it changed. Predators found fewer victims. Elders were treated with dignity. Young beings of mixed species learned side by side, no longer inheriting the quiet despair their parents once accepted as inevitable. Humans did not rule the station. They did not need to. They were present. And where humans were present, certain patterns emerged. Someone fixed what was broken. Someone asked questions instead of issuing orders. Someone stayed when leaving would have been easier. The Sharaviel Compact became active across multiple systems, not as an alliance of dominance, but as a framework of mutual aid. Human logistics supported it. Human medics staffed it. Human engineers reinforced it. Not because they were commanded to, but because someone asked. Elias never became important in the way the galaxy measured importance. He was not elevated to leadership. He was not offered titles. He did not command fleets. He declined most formal offers politely and all matchmaking attempts with amused stubbornness, though he did eventually accept an invitation to visit the Sharaviel homeworld, purely for cultural exchange, as Taleth phrased it with unmistakable fondness. What he did become was something far rarer: trusted. When disputes arose, humans were invited, not as enforcers, but as mediators. When stations teetered on collapse, humans arrived, not with ultimatums, but supplies. When old systems failed, humans rebuilt, not perfectly, but together. The galaxy began updating its models. Humanity was reclassified, not as harmless, not as aggressive, but dangerously stabilizing. They disrupted exploitative systems simply by refusing to play along. They undermined tyrannies by offering better alternatives. They weakened empires by making cooperation more profitable than control. They did not ask, "How do we win?" They asked, "How do we all get through this?" Talef lived long enough to see her legacy spread farther than she had ever dreamed. She watched her daughters thrive, not as prizes, not as leverage, but as partners among humans who treated them as equals. She watched her people regain pride, not through dominance, but through connection. On her final day, Elias asked her to walk with her one last time along the concourse of Virex 9. "You never understood what you did," she said gently. Elias smiled sadly. "I think I did what anyone should have." Taleth stopped, turning her ancient gaze toward him. "That," she said, "is why it mattered." After she was gone, a small plaque was placed near Docking Ring C. No statues, no heroic imagery, just simple words translated into a dozen languages. Here, someone chose kindness. The galaxy felt it. And far beyond Virex 9, beyond reports, beyond politics, beyond the reach of any single species, the idea spread that strength did not always look like power, that bravery did not always look like war, that humanity's greatest weapon was not its ships or its technology or even its resilience. It was its refusal to look away. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.